Welcome back to Lying Serpent Media. Okay guys, today I'm going to be sharing an article that I found today on the internet by Israel International News, and it's penned by David Rubin. It seems that there seemed to be some bewilderment as to why Bernie Sanders, who is a Jew, seems to support and stand behind Representative ILhan Omar with all of her so-called anti-Semitic rhetoric. So I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from the article, and then we're going to dig into Bernie Sanders' background, and maybe this will help explain the reason why he has far left leanings, why he is supporting socialists and socialist ideas and socialism. Okay, let's get into it. On the foreign policy front, instead of working to strengthen the United States-Israel relationship, a bonding relationship of values that movingly brought Democratic President Harry Truman to tears, Senator Sanders has criticized Israel for strongly responding to Hamas terrorist rockets fired at Israel cities. He supported the Iran nuclear deal, which most Israelis on both the right and left strongly oppose as an existential threat to the Jewish state's survival, and opposed the moving of the American embassy to Jerusalem, Israel's capital, for over 3,000 years. At times, he has defended Israel's need to defend itself, but because of the increasingly strident anti-Israel stance of most of his far-left supporters, he has been more and more reluctant to side with the Jewish state. Now let's explain this confusion, or why his fellow Jews say he seemed to be disconnected. Let's give some history and background to Bernie Sanders. It says Bernie Sanders, now of Vermont, was born and raised in what has in many ways been the Jewish heart and soul of America, Brooklyn, and has an accent and intonation to match. Sanders was reticent during his previous election campaign regarding matters of his Jewish upbringing. He seemed especially reluctant to discuss his time in Israel, where he traveled with his first wife, Deborah Schilling, who also was Jewish. His second and current wife is not Jewish, nor are his children, because you see, these Jews, they are Jewish based on the mother, unlike the Hebrews in the Bible, the Old Testament Bible. So that's why the article is saying that the children is not Jewish, because they go by the mother. Okay, back to the article. Young Bernie had the distinction of volunteering for a few months in the mid-60s in an Israeli kibbutz of the leftist Zionist Hashemer Hatzair movement. The 2016 Sanders campaign usually turned away queries about his Israel stay, as well as his Jewish background, preferring to talk about other ethnic groups like African Americans and Muslim Americans. If you know anything about socialism and communism, socialists and communists always seem to align themselves with the proletariat, or the ones that seem to be, you know, down and out, the ones that are getting the, you know what, end of the stick. And this is how they gather a movement around them. You know, they use these people by trying to align themselves and have them to believe that they care about their causes to get their votes. And when they get their votes and get into office, then those people aren't even thought about anymore. But let's get into some of the things that they are kind of upset about with Bernie Sanders. It says, what cannot be accepted in any way, shape, or form is an expression of support for a habitual hater of Jews. ILhan Omar, who based on her history and ideology is unlikely to change her stripes as a committed supporter of jihadist Islam and its terrorists that have intentionally maimed and killed Israeli civilians by thousands. And to me, you know, an eye for an eye, I do not believe in. You know, that was in Old Testament times, but then when Jesus came upon this earth, it was love your enemies, you know, do good to those that persecute you and treat you bad. You know, but this is a perfect example of chickens coming home to roost. Now, when these people went in there in 1948 and occupied Israel, illegal occupation of Israel, some may disagree, but hey, if you do your research and dig into what went on behind the scenes with America getting into the war and them promising, you know, giving Israel to these people, then this is an illegal occupation. There were people already living on that land that they went in there and moved those people off that land. But this is not the topic of today's segment. Today we're going to focus on Bernie and the reason why fellow Jews are dismayed by his support of Representative ILhan Omar. You know, when Bernie was young and he spent time with this Hashemar Hatzair group, you know, I'm pretty sure he was indoctrinated. This man has been a socialist for a long time. And I'm going to read a statement towards the end of this segment just to show you how these things were planned, you know, in the past. And it's evident of what is taking place today. The reason why people can't believe you have Jews on the far left. You know, this was all by design. But I'm going to share some more excerpts with this article and what 9/11 truthers had to reveal about, you know, Hitler and the Jews. It say, here are Hitler's famous words from Mein Kampf. Remember, as I shared with you before, the Israeli Mossad motto is, by way of deception, thou shalt do war. So let's get into Hitler's statements in Mein Kampf. It says, from time immemorial, the Jews have known better than any others how falsehood and calumny can be exploited. Is not their very existence founded on one great lie? Namely, that they are a religious community. Way back then, Hitler putting out truth about the Khazars, these Khazarian people, whose history, which many of them do not know, unfortunately, is based on a lie. It's kind of like a child being adopted at birth and then growing up to an adolescent and coming to realize all along he had been adopted. You know, this is what this reminds me of, because there's Jews who, you know, all their life, all they've known is this so-called Jewish heritage. And they did not know that they had come from a certain place, you know, one of these Soviet satellites, you know, around the Black Sea, the Khazar. But let's get back into the article. Okay, let me back up. Is not their very existence founded on one great lie, namely that they are a religious community, whereas in reality they are a race? And what a race! One of the greatest thinkers that mankind has produced has branded the Jews for all time with a statement which is profoundly and exactly true. Schopenhauer called the Jew the great master of lies. Those who do not realize the truth of that statement or do not wish to believe it will never be able to lend a hand in helping truth to prevail. That in the big lie there is always a certain force of credibility, because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted and the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie. Since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods, it would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe that others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Even though the facts which prove this to be so may be brought clearly to their minds, they will still doubt and waver and will continue to think that there may be some other explanation, for the grossly impudent lie always leaves traces behind it. Even after it has been nailed down, A fact which is known to all expert liars is this, world, and to all who conspire together in the art of lying, these people know only too well how to use falsehoods for the basest purposes. Now, Hitler's problem was he irrationally charged all Jews for the downfall of World War I and why they lost. But we know there's a group within a group, you know, these Marxist Jews, these socialist Jews that went in there and were stirring up things. Okay, so let me get to this statement by Pawns in the Game, and just so people can know that, you know, there's some validity in what Hitler was saying with these small lies, and, you know, how people are, when they are traumatized, just like 9/11, you know, we watched those planes go into those towers, never thinking because of the trauma how that building 7 just collapsed like controlled demolition. Wasn't even hit by a plane, but yet they kept telling us this story, you know, terrorist attack. But anyway, let's get into some of these quotes from my famous book, The Synagogue of Satan. Now, I'm going to share with you how many countries these Jews have been kicked out of over the last 1,000 years. Mainz, 1012, France, 1182, Upper Bavaria, 1276, England, 1290, France, 1306, France again, 1322, Saxony, 1349, Hungary, 1360, Belgium, 1370, Slovakia, 1380, France again, 1394, Austria, 1420, Lyons, 1420, Cologne, 1424, Mainz again, 1438, Augsburg, 1438, Upper Bavaria, again, 1442, Netherlands, 1444, Brandenburg, 1446, Mainz again, 1462, Lithuania, 1495, Portugal, 1496, Naples, 1496. You have to wonder why these people are getting kicked out of so many countries. Navarre, 1498, Nuremberg, 1498, Brandenburg, 1510, Prussia, 1510, Genoa, 1515, Naples, 1533, Italy, 1540, Naples, 1541, Prague, 1541, Genoa, 1550, Bavaria, 1551, Prague, 1557, the Papal States, 1569, Hungary, 1582, Hamburg, 1649, Vienna, 1669, Slovakia, 1744. Indeed, England is not the first country to expel the Jews. Okay, now let me get to this statement that I said I was going to share with you from Pawns in the Game in regards to Bernie Sanders and what these people do to bring about a certain result. You know, they have these little indoctrination camps because they wanted Israel to be a socialist Marxist state. So this is again taken from Pawns in the Game, page 81, and he is quoting from the name of this book is called The Polish Jew. It was published in 1906, and it's by Miss B. Bakersfield. Okay, social Zionism, which is basically what I was referring to with the Hashemer Hatzair movement. That's what that is. Socialist Zionism. You know, youth camps, indoctrinating these kids. Okay, social Zionism aims at converting the Zionists to socialism. Hence, Bernie Sanders. Before they go to Palestine, in order to facilitate the establishment of a socialist government. In the meantime, they do their best to overthrow those European governments which do not attain to their political standard. Their program, which is full of socialistic ideas. Do that sound familiar? This healthcare system Bernie Sanders wants to put in place for the United States if he becomes president. He said he's going to raise our taxes. I don't know about you, but like I said before in an earlier video, I pay over $12,000 in taxes every year. So I'm not looking to vote for somebody like a Bernie Sanders or a Beto or any other socialist agenda pushing president running for a person that's running for president, you know, with those type of ideas. I can't even talk because that's upsetting to me. I pay enough money. Okay, where was I? Zionists to socialism before they go to Palestine in order to facilitate the establishment of a socialist government. In the meantime, they do their best to overthrow those European governments which do not attain to their political standard. Their program, which is full of socialistic ideas, includes the organization of strikes, acts of terror, and the organizers being very young, acts of folly as well. Acts of folly by the organizers of these young people. What that sound like? Antifa running around here tearing up cities, you know, are not willing to hear other people debate on the other side. These college campuses, you know, expelling all the conservative professors and indoctrinating all these kids in socialistic liberalism. And you wonder why, you know, when your kids come home from college, why they are totally different. You know, this is why parents, you have to start with your kids young, you know, and start training them and teaching them so they will have a barrier for when they go into these indoctrination camps, which is the schools of today, you know, that they can withstand that and will not be converted into somebody you won't even recognize when they come back home from school. Okay, guys. That's all I really wanted to share with you today. And with Bernie Sanders, fellow Jews, and why they are so bewildered as to why he is supporting ILhan Omar, the very antithesis of what they supposed to be representing. And this is the reason, because he was indoctrinated. You know, he spent time in that youth movement group over there in Israel, the Hashomer Hatzer. And I just want to share one more thing that this man mentioned. And every time they mention this, I have to speak out about it because it's just not the truth. Just like Hitler said, you know, these people claimed it was founded on a great lie. And the man actually quotes this in this Israel National News article. He says, in a political party that often seems to thrive on racial, ethnic, and or religious pride when it comes to other groups, the amazing Jewish narrative seems to be missing. The historical story of the Jews includes a miraculous emergence from slavery in ancient Egypt, the receiving of the 10 Commandments of Mount Sinai, the 1,000-year kingdom of Israel, 2,000 years of national wilderness, combined with incredibly disproportionate success in the world despite great discrimination, persecution, and even mass slaughter. You see, these people was born into a lie they don't even know. You know, they are not the descendants of Abraham. These people were known as Hebrews. The Hebrews. Go read the Old Testament. All through that Bible in the Old Testament, it's the Hebrews that Pharaoh is relating to. He is not talking about Jews. You get to the New Testament, as I stated before, when the kingdom split, it was rent from Solomon because of his sins. With all those wives and concubines, they led his heart away from God. So when his son Rehoboam came upon the throne, Jeroboam took 10 tribes, which was known as the tribes of Israel, and Rehoboam kept Judah and Benjamin. And as time went on, the tribes of Israel continued to rebel against God, and wars rose up against them, scattered them. And then what we have into the New Testament, when Jesus came along, the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, Judeans. Okay, guys, I'm not going to preach today. This is not what this study is about, but every time I keep hearing their historical significance of how they came out of Egypt. I just got to speak on it because it's not the truth. All you have to do is read your Bible and you will see the truth for yourself. Go and research history. Matter of fact, I already did a video. Benjamin Netanyahu said, you know, they admitted we are Khazars. So there you have it, folks. And that's it for today's segment. And I'll see you next time.